all your school rugby, all in one place. This is Next Gen 15.
Hello and welcome back to the Next Gen 15 podcast. A little later than usual because it's been a bit of a week this week. Will and myself have both been busy charging around the place. How are you, Will? Busy as ever?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you, Angus. Yeah, we've just been talking about the mental schedules that we've both had, and but look, there's always a time and place to get a podcast out, and no better than Valentine's Day. Wouldn't we want to spending with anyone else other than you, Angus?
There's no one else I could have pictured Valentine's Day with. It couldn't be better. Joe, I used to live at university with a guy who was a bit of a Lothario, and his birthday was Valentine's Day. It was the most ridiculous thing on earth. The only man on the planet who managed somehow to make Valentine's Day all about him. Absolutely outrageous.
Exactly. I'm sure your fairly new wife is very happy with you spending time talking about rugby.
Oh, she wall to wall Zoom calls today. She's thrilled at the prospect. Somewhere there's a card though, so it's all good.
Good. Save it with that.
Exactly. Right, before we get cracking, I suppose, as ever, a little reminder as to where to find us, what to do. We're on Acast, we're on Amazon Music, I think, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, the works. And you can find us on all the social media channels at NextGen15, at NextGenXV, and at NextGen15 Clubhouse. Well, it's been a busy, 10 days since we last spoke. The world of age grade rugby has been exploding into life.
It has, and it's kind of coming up into a bit of a crescendo week. Obviously, we restarted this podcast back in January at the resumption of the Academy League, and that will be reaching its finale this weekend. And I think round 3, well, obviously next week we'll have round 3 of the Under-20 Six Nations, but this sort of week gives us the best possible time to review and reset. It's kind of the halfway mark where we can take note and go, okay, how are teams doing? How are teams faring? And it's also the time we'll start to be thinking about under-18 Six Nations as well, with sort of people getting their final chance in the shop window at this Prem Finals Day on Sunday. So in terms of all that, you throw in a couple of Schools Cup quarterfinals, semi-finals that are sort of coming to a head over the next couple of weeks, and this is prime time for us. Prime time.
This is where it all begins. February and March is the zone as far as schools and age grade rugby is concerned. And it's all about to get very heavy in the school session. The chatter has been going on. My emails have been full on Rosslyn Park National School 7's prep, Sedbergh 10's prep, and plenty else as well. It's about to go crazy, I think. But I suppose we might as well start with the oldest of our sort of section, which is the under 20s, and a bit of a funny round, the last one, wasn't it? It sort of, we were expecting competition and where there wasn't competition, and we were expecting a lack of competition where there was competition. It was an odd one.
Yeah, it was. And I think we obviously look back at that Friday night, and some incredible score lines which caught the headlines of wider rugby fans, especially because I think a lot of Welsh fans hoped that it would forebode the result the following day. Likewise with England fans, little did they know, obviously, on that Friday night. But yeah, I think England. We'll start with England first. I think that's quite an easy one to get away with. They're showing people how they can just, in a kind of a similar nature to how the Ireland senior team perform, they're extremely good at just keeping people at arm's length and keeping teams just at a distance and not making it a competition. And they did it in that first game against Ireland, where despite it being a relatively close scoreline, it always felt as though England were going to win the game. Even going down to 14, it's just the way that they kind of have this connection and suffocation and physicality that forebodes that. And I think it was the same with this French game. A little bit more joué than the Ireland game. Fitting, obviously, for the opposition.
Slightly better conditions in that Ireland game, I suppose.
True. And they were able to run around a little bit more, but it still came down to that sort of grunt force. And look, can anyone stop England from here? Probably not. And that's weirdly probably the Grand Slam sewn up for a lack of a incredible shock victory, because they just are so clinical.
Yeah, I mean, if England slip up from this point, it's because, in essence, it's because they're slipping up rather than because someone else is stepping up. I think the gap is too significant. I mean, I keep hammering home the point every time we speak, almost that this team has so much professional experience. But I think you're seeing it in how you're describing there, that they're able to keep teams at arm's length. They're able, just through sheer physicality, to just maintain control of the game, and that comes from experience, that Premiership level experience, that European level experience of just being able to go physically, we're more than up to this task. No one is presenting us with a physical challenge we've not seen before. So we can absorb that, we can match it, we can exceed it. And then it's just a case of playing off the back of that. And you know, when the forward pack is as good as England's is, and the backs are very good as well, obviously, but when the forward pack is that good, they're setting a platform that you can just continue to keep playing and playing and playing off. They're a hell of a side, and I don't, sort of slight tangent, but I don't think it's going to be very long until we see some of these guys earning senior caps. I really don't. You know, the story this week that broke that Kepu Tuipulotu was asked last year as a schoolboy if he was interested in joining up with the Wales senior camp. I'm not sure who that says more about, Kepu or Wales, but it's a sign of how close some of these guys are to the top end. I mean, obviously Henry Pollock's back in senior camp this week, but I think he'll be swiftly followed by a few.
I think they possess the skills and quality that up until this weekend the England senior team have lacked, which is like closing out games and winning, the art of winning. Which we talk about in so many different facets. I think England under Steve Borthwick have been an incredibly underrated team over the last 12 months. They just haven't won. Yeah. And England under 20s have been doing that one better, where they're just able to win. And now we're seeing like this new age of players sort of seeping into the senior squad that can hopefully solidify that winning mentality. The other rumor mill going around at the moment was that Junior Kapoku has been sniffing around a lot of Premiership clubs this week in an aim to try and get himself back into the Premiership, and obviously then qualifying for England's senior squad. If I was England, if I was the RFU, that would be up there with priority sort of number one, because, well, maybe the RFU have a few more priorities on their list, but it's definitely up there, because that's where England are short of in the senior squad at lock. We've seen that. It's blatantly obvious at the moment. They've got basically Chesham, Itoje, and Martin that are fit. Those are the only three they're really happy with. And I think having a Junior Kapoka in there would be amazing. Tom Burrow has just come on leaps and bounds over the last couple of weeks, and is sort of taken like a duck to water to captaincy out of nowhere. And like, you've even got players like Aidan Ainsworth-Cave, who's been coming off the bench, who's an absolute man mountain, and is probably in any other year of under 20s someone that we sing and dance about. But like this sort of under 20s group are just that good that he's sort of slipped under the radar. So like, again, we've kind of slipped into the argument of sort of who's sort of next cab off the rank and whatever, and we've kind of spoken about that previously. But as I say, they have that special product of being able to win rugby games that the England senior team up until this weekend, and Finn Smith obviously being the sort of key catalyst, you'd say, to unlocking that, is they've really lacked.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I mean, the fascinating one for me as well, I mean, we've spoken about it before, but it's the props. There's a bit of me that I keep wondering why England want Asher Opoku Forjor to play at tight head when you consider what's coming through. Because you could have him and Finn Baxter competing for the next 10 years at loosehead. You've got Afo for Sogburn coming through at tight head. You then have Billy Seller and Ty Raymond and a whole host of others coming through at under 20s level on the tight head side. And kind of like, I get that today tight head is a problem for England, but in about a year's time, it's really not going to be a problem.
Yeah.
So I'm always thinking it's a bit short-sighted to try and shoehorn Asher into being a tight head when Sale clearly see him as a loose head. And that's actually, although the loose head side has been England's strength in the front row for the last 5-6 years, with Marler retired, with Genge now becoming a senior player, with Mako gone, you go, well, actually, you could do with some young competition on the loose head side because the young competition is coming through on the tight head side. So it'd be interesting to see how that plays out because, I mean, Billy Seller's an immense player. Ty Raymond is not far behind, if behind at all, really. Just a year younger, basically.
Yeah.
There's some serious quality there.
And they're modern day tight heads as well. Like, I think the tight heads that England's, the senior squad have at the moment in Will Stewart and Joe Hayes, maybe Joe Hayes to a certain extent, but they're great scrummagers, good ball carriers. But like Seller, Raymond are like, brilliant handling, brilliant spatial awareness, and obviously Billy Seller in particular is an incredible scrummager. Tyrone Mont has that athleticism to him. He's a tall kind of.
Is there a stat about Ty Raymond that I'm sure I heard this when he made his Sale debut, that he has the highest vertical leap in the squad, which is extraordinary.
That's insane. I mean, again, this is one of our breaking the mold of traditional rugby union things that maybe you in particular, Angus, love to talk about. But could we see a Tyrone Mont being lifted at the line-out situation in the next sort of couple of years? Like,
well, if he's got a vertical leap like that, just a one-man lift at the front, that'll do the job.
Exactly. Maybe that's one to add to our bucket list of you get sort of the 9 throwing into Ty Raymond who sort of chucks it down. Oh my goodness, that would be heaven for you, I think.
Absolutely. Come on, let's mix things up.
But yeah, I just think that, as you say, it is a bit of short-sightedness. But are we surprised with that coming out of the RFU? Probably not. So yeah, I think they soon come for those boys. But at the moment, if I were them, I'd almost not be wanting. This is probably a backwards way of thinking. Is probably why I'm not in the position that they're in. But I wouldn't want to be called up to a senior squad at the moment because I'd want to be enjoying and relishing this time with this group. Obviously, they'll want to.
Well, and that's the environment in a way that I think they're fostering. You know, their big buzzword being brotherhood and all the rest of it. I think they are really trying to create a sort of a real sense that this is a group of guys that are going to go through a huge amount together. I mean, and probably wisely so. They're probably looking at this squad and thinking, do you know what? For the next 10, 12 years, these guys are going to form the backbone of the senior side. We want to turn them into a team, not just in name but in spirit. So I think in a way, the bigwigs would probably agree that they want to keep these guys together for as long as they can because they want to foster that. How much easier will it be in the future if all these guys are all mates already? They all know each other already. They all know the ins and outs of how people play every time they come into camp. There's no sense of having to relearn everything. You can just get straight to work from day one. So it'll be interesting. We've diverged as ever. I mean, England, but that was the job, wasn't it? It was the same at the top end. Ireland and France, first 2 games up, know they're going to be the toughest 2 games. They've done the job. Ireland and France now just sort of chasing and hoping for a slip up, I suppose. But the other game on Friday night, Wales-Italy. Who saw that coming? Wales 2018 victory. Coming from behind as well, they're 15-10 down at the break.
Yeah, again, like that spirit and fight and desire. It's something that whoever's in the Wales head coach senior squad this week, like whoever's in that role, will be really looking for, because it's again something that Wales have just lacked so much across the board. And look, it's a brilliant win for them. I just hope it sparks something. I hope they can now go into that Ireland week and go, right, okay, there's a hope here, because yes, Ireland sort of came back with a vengeance to kind of demolish the Scots, and Wales will probably see themselves closer to Scotland in quality than they will Ireland. But like they've proven now that they can come back from behind and do a job. So hopefully it acts as a bit of a springboard for Wales. So they just needed that win. Italy, I think, are going to be such a. We think they're great one week and not so great the next. This Six Nations, kind of in that French mold that we used to have throughout the 2010s of which French side is going to turn up. It may be which Italian side and the under 20 level is going to turn up, because they had opportunities to put the game away and sort of kick on, and if they'd gone sort of 2 from 2 over the opening 2 rounds, and it would have been them. That England-Italy game would have then become really
that starts to loom large, yeah. I mean, from a Welsh point of view as well. I mean, we spoke at the beginning of the tournament about this being almost a 2-tiered tournament. You've got the sort of top 3 of England, France, and Ireland, and the bottom 3 of Italy, Wales, and Scotland. And this victory puts Wales in pole position really to top that little mini table between those 3. They'll be eyeing up the fixture against Scotland in a few weeks' time and thinking, well, win that, and that's 4th place sewn up, and probably they may not admit it in public, but I'm sure internally that was probably the target for all 3 of those sides. Perhaps Italy, let's say, they might have been looking a little higher, but certainly Wales and Scotland would have been going win the mini group.
I agree, and I think a few sort of individual shout outs. I see Tom Bowen. We spoke about it last week.
I love Tom Bowen. I just love it.
Yeah, he's going to be such a key character, I think, in the Welsh setup over the next couple of years. I don't like to put sort of comparisons on players, but the Shane Williams sort of link up is hard to miss, because of just the way that he plays. And I think it surprised me heavily that he wasn't starting from the off in the first game against France. Look, there was most likely either he's had a knock or whatever, or maybe he didn't train as much. I know he spent a lot of time with Cardiff leading up to it.
Playing a bit of senior stuff, wasn't he?
Yeah. But like, even if we want, like, I think he's one of those players that you just want to get on the pitch, and it showed that with his score. And like Harry Thomas came away with player of the match. 2 tries for him off sort of that Welsh set piece that was working really well. And I think as you say, those individuals are going to be the difference. And Wales needed people to stand up and take the reins, and those 2 in particular seemed to really do that at the weekend.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I used to love watching Tom Bowen when he was at Clifton College, and I used to think teams were insane. I don't know if they'd not done their research or they just thought this is the way you've got to play rugby, and they'd kick to Tom Bowen in an open space at fullback, and I would always just think, you're insane. Why would you give this guy the opportunity to run at you? All he's got to do, particularly when you're as talented as him, is pick out a slightly weaker defender, and he's going through, and he did it time and time again. Always remember him scoring a last second try in the corner to create this unbelievable turnaround for Clifton College against Millfield. I think they were about 15, maybe 20 points down.
I think I remember that game. Yeah.
And Bowen scores in the corner in the last second to win it. It was unbelievable, and he just trotted back as if it was one of those things that just happens. Unbelievable. He's a great player. Probably less happy are Scotland. 33-15 doesn't look awful, but at 26-5 at half time, the game was already done, basically.
Yeah. Again, like, I think Ireland seemed really grudged by sort of how that game against England came about, and I think they wanted to have put themselves in a better foothold. But this Irish side completely sort of took hold of things in this game. weirdly, I've just actually been clicking around on the under-20s website, and this stats page which I saw a couple of days ago, and I was interested to sort of bring this up. It was a pretty even game on the stats front. Carries pretty much similar. Meters carried, Scotland actually gained more meters than Ireland.
I think I've seen a stat that says that Ruben Logan might have carried more distance than anyone else in the competition that's not a fullback, or something along those lines.
I think that'd be the case. They beated more defenders. The issue though comes in 16 handling errors and 13 turnovers conceded for Scotland. They are the masters of their own downfall. Yeah.
I feel for them there, in that that's probably where the gap in quality comes in, and there's nothing they can particularly do about that. Ireland have got, an absolutely outstanding system that's bringing players through, and Scotland for a long time haven't, and just have simply a smaller player pool. And those stats probably highlight just that bit where you're under pressure. The very best can still execute their skills, and perhaps the ones that are striving to get to that point just find it that bit harder to execute their skills, and you get the handling errors.
Yeah, and on a discipline front as well, 12 penalties conceded to Ireland's 10, but 11 defensive penalties conceded. So when they're defending, they're not defending very well. Yeah. And that seemed to be sort of the real issue. They made 4 changes at half time as well, which I don't really like at an under-20 level. I know and understand, especially with the Scotland side, that they're just going to be desperate to win a game. But if you're getting hooked at half time in what is, as we say, like a rebuilding Scottish outfit, then I just don't think it does the team a world of confidence. It doesn't do them any good. Yes, they look as though they performed slightly better in the second half with those changes being made, but I think morale and sort of all the things that England are doing right on that front, where Scotland are going wrong.
Yeah, you don't want to be essentially creating what is a good chunk of your squad a major confidence problem.
Yeah.
Particularly when you don't have that depth of player pool. You need to keep everyone feeling all right. I mean, you can leave a guy on for another 3-4 minutes, can't you? And then make an early change in the second half. We've seen that happen many a time.
Yeah.
Ireland, though,
yes,
I felt very similar about them as I actually did in the England game, which is this is a team that makes you work for absolutely everything. They're just relentless. England had the quality to survive that, but as we spoke about, it was a game that was sort of really difficult for England. It was a sign of their quality that they came through to win it. Ireland here, similar kind of thing. They just put Scotland under so much pressure, and just the difference in quality and opposition meant that they could come through and get their reward in points for it. But they're just such a difficult side to play against.
They are, and I think we saw a different type of Ireland this weekend. Like a first half hat trick for Charlie Maloney.
He's a proper player, Charlie.
He's
Maloney.
A proper player.
Yeah.
I'm disappointed we sort of taken this long to sort of mention that he scored a first half hat trick, which at international level you only really get French wingers doing that these days. So like I was really, really strong from him. I think they've got a really good kind of 9-10 combo in Logan and Wisniewski. Like those two, obviously Prendergast leaves a massive hole in that under-20 setup as of last year. Like he's been marshalling that for so long, and obviously it's gone on to his senior plaudits. And you're always now looking at the guy in behind to sort of step up, and I think he's done just that. They're allowed to play with a bit more alacrity, a bit more freedom, and it certainly showed in that first half. As much as Scotland were poor and shooting themselves in the foot, you have to capitalise on it, and Ireland did just that.
They really did, and yeah, just to go back to Maloney, I'm so excited about him. I think the long-term battle at both Leinster and Ireland between him and Hugo Keane at fullback is going to be really exciting. I mean, it basically him coming through. I suspect means that Jamie Osborne is definitely competing for a place in the centres rather than a fullback now.
Yeah.
Because Maloney he's a brilliant player. He was outstanding for them at under 18 level, and he's kicking on at under 20s. Actually, the other one, just thinking about filling the Prendergast hole. Keep an eye out in the years to come for Keith Wood's son, who is a fly half.
Oh, really? He's a fly half.
On tour in the summer with the under 18s, performed pretty well. Doesn't take after his dad in terms of the physical stuff, but certainly takes over from his dad in terms of wanting to show his skills on the field. He's a very tidy player. He's going to be good fun to watch. Clearly, he watched the videos of his dad kicking the ball in all sorts of unusual scenarios rather than the videos of his dad fighting.
Exactly. That's better off that he's doing it that way around.
Well, exactly. I mean, but it does show you, doesn't it, that just depending on where you're, because he obviously, genetics are genetics, aren't they? But so he obviously has a range of qualities, but it does show you that if you got a rugby playing father or mother for that matter, your exposure to the game just means your skills are just accelerated so much because you're just practicing them from such a young age.
Yeah.
You get so many people, don't you, talking about how rugby, there's a lot of nepotism. I always tend to think, is it just that not that many people play rugby, and these guys, kids, just get a real exposure at a young age and therefore develop their skills more so than anyone else? I've always kind of felt that, but that's a topic for another day.
It is. We've been on quite a few tangents today, haven't we? We've been spreading our wings, but yeah, that's probably under 20s wrapped up. We'll have more than enough time to sort of look ahead and plough on with the next half of fixtures, because obviously this is a fallow week. I hate these fallow weeks because you really get into it and then they just sort of go, no Six Nations anymore.
Oh no, it's a disaster. For the first time in forever long, we don't really have anything happening from a live stream perspective.
Yeah.
This weekend, I thought, I can settle in and watch the Six Nations. No, not a bit of it.
No chance.
Not a bit of it. Premiership Cup and PWR, I think, is where I'm at, and a bit of Academy Finals Day on Sunday.
Indeed. You'll be able to watch all of that, and let's talk about that, because this league is so interesting. We can talk about the format in a little bit, but we'll talk about what we've got in front of us for this weekend. Saints and Bath in a final again. Poor Saints. They are just continuing to put their hand up every year and go, yeah, actually, we'll give it another shot. Heartbreak after heartbreak after heartbreak. And it means that we're going to have Saracens against Leicester in the 3rd, 4th playoff, Harlequins against Yorkshire.
Yeah,
which is brilliant for Yorkshire. How good to see them up and competing for 5th and 6th.
Just brilliant.
And then we've got no, this is really testing. I haven't got it in front of me.
Gloucester Sale for 7th, Bristol Newcastle for 9th, and then kind of for 11th, although I suppose 11th is already sealed up. Exeter Chiefs playing RGC from North Wales. I mean, it's an interesting one, isn't it? I mean that. Well, I'll tell you what, one of us, I actually can't remember, this is not any sort of false modesty. One of us predicted that it was going to be Bath that went through on points difference. I can't remember which of the two of us it was, but I
can't remember. We talked too much.
Somewhere between the two of us, we got that one right.
Yeah, you might have to VAR check. And
what a climax to the campaign. I mean, Saracens did everything they could, put a good score on Harlequins. Couldn't have done any more, but Bath equally dominant down at Gloucester and seal it on points difference. I mean, that's as good a South Pool as I've seen. That competition between Quins, Sarries and Bath, all finishing within a point. Top 2 separated by points difference, all winning 4 out of 5 games, just taking games off each other. That's a top quality bit of competition.
It is, and it's sort of. It's a blessing and a curse for this finals day as a whole, because it's meant that there's jeopardy as to who's going to get to this final the whole way through, but it also is kind of proved that the three best teams are in the same conference.
Yeah.
So like we're going to have these playoff games this weekend that won't necessarily reflect the top two teams of the competition going up against each other, the next best going up against each other. It won't reflect that, which I think is something that Prem Rugby and this sort of competition can potentially adapt. But it's
you are writing the Northampton Saints team talk right now, though. That's
yeah. Oh, absolutely, and look, I think they don't need my help on it because they can just watch back their last few attempts, because it's been so close yet so far for Northampton, and they've played so well over the course of this academy. They peaked obviously perfectly against Leicester, and have scored some ridiculous tries along the way. Nothing short of what we'd expect from a Northampton Saints side. But Bath, on the other hand, are just like don't play the prettiest rugby. They don't play all the nice flashy stuff. We don't get videos of them in the week scoring end to end, but they win games so well. They just, James Lineker, literally, it's like watching like a pirate ship in Northampton Saints, where they're sort of swinging around on the decks and going crazy against like a Navy submarine in Bath, in which it's all very precise, and James Lineker's sort of sat up there on the deck, sort of clicking the right buttons, and the torpedoes fire and sort of tactically take them down. That's my sort of comparison.
What an analogy!
That's my comparison. Because I think that it's those Mavericks of Northampton that don't necessarily always have the nuts and bolts fully polished, but we don't expect that under 18 level. But they put on a show. But I think they might fall short to a Bath side who are just so clinical. Lineker just sits in that pocket and just fires kicks left, right, and centre. Kicks for corner. The driving ball works like clockwork. He nails his conversion. They're 7 points up, and you go, oh my goodness, we haven't touched the ball, and they're already in the lead.
We've done nothing wrong yet, and we're behind on the scoreboard for sure. I mean, well, let's get into the format then, because I know what you mean. Yeah, the South, it's indisputable. The South Pool is a stronger pool than the North. They've had the same issue for a few years in the Ace League. Depending on the format of the new rumoured under 20s competition at Premiership level, we could end up seeing a similar situation there. Is there anything they can do about it, or is it just that's the way the dice fall? And if you want to have a geographical spread of academies, it has to look like this, and is it a more fundamental change that needs to happen?
I just think that the pools don't necessarily have to be north-south geographical. I just don't. I think, like, you look at a Quins, they have to travel. Well, they have to travel down to Exeter. It's the same distance as going to travel up to like a Yorkshire or a Newcastle. So when we say, oh, it's better for them, and they play teams closer to them, they don't. They just play teams that are in roughly the same geographical location. And at the end of the day, with the way that the rugby map goes, there's a hub in this spine of East Midlands down to London, where half of the teams are. Then we get loads in the West Country and a couple up north. So if you have those teams in the Midlands split up, I say Midlands, I mean Midlands to London. You split those teams up and say, okay, yes, a couple of you are going to have to go down to Exeter. A couple of you are going to have to go to Newcastle. But you get to play each other in that sort of a little area, and you're going to have, like, everyone has a trip down south, everyone has a trip across west, everyone has a trip up north, or vice versa. They all come in like that. I don't think the geographical nature is as much of a headache as people deem it to be. I think maybe when Worcester, Wasps, and London Irish were in it, it could make more sense, because like that then congested the amount of teams that were in that sort of that middle
that Midland zone.
But like now that they're out of the mix for now, Let's not get into that whole London Irish takeover thing. Because we've all got places to be on Valentine's Day.
Jordan. All I'll say is Eddie Jordan loves to mix things up. Always has.
Yeah. Let's leave it at that. I just don't think it's that much of a logistical nightmare for them to go and play each other. And I'd love to see Saracens go and play Newcastle, or Quins go and play Yorkshire. Ironically, they are this weekend, but in the league
in general,
format,
yeah, I know what you mean. It's
mix it up.
Yeah, you're playing the same teams every year. Actually, maybe it's not giving the young guys the exposure against different styles of play that they maybe need, because they're always playing against the same teams. There's a definite argument for that. Plus, whenever there's a bye week in years gone by, obviously it's slightly different now with the not being bye weeks in the South Pool. But in years gone by, they used to fill that gap anyway by playing the two sides that weren't playing against each other.
Yeah.
So the teams themselves were organising that. So the teams obviously don't really have a problem with travel.
No.
Perhaps Newcastle might, just because they're a slightly lower budget team, and maybe that travel budget doesn't stretch as far. But in general, the teams, it would appear, don't have too much of a problem with things. Ultimately, where I sit on this is that the whole thing needs to be torn up a little bit.
Yeah.
Because for the life of me, I cannot understand why the RFU, when they had, 3 centralised academies already, and they were in the process of drawing up the PGP, I can't understand why they didn't propose bringing the whole academy system.
It has to have been at the table at some point.
They had all the power in that conversation. It was the one chance, probably in the last 20 years, that they could have actually made it happen.
Well, it's how the RFU have managed to do it at under 18 level with the women. Like they don't have academies. They've got these regionalised areas that I think they do call it the PDG. And they go and play festivals, and basically all it is shop windows. They just have constant shop windows where they go, look, by the way, we're going to go to Kent this week. So Quins and Sarries and any other club, or probably Northampton at this rate, that have to go down to Kent. Come and have a look. Well, Loughborough, come and have a look and see what you think. And do it like that, and then you can pick those players out, because it then makes sense rather than having people streamlined.
Yeah, and I'll admit to a bias on this, which is that I think that there should be a draft in the Premiership, and therefore centralising everything opens the door to do that. But we're in the process here of trying to reduce the budgetary problems on clubs. Well, if we centralise the academies, that reduces that problem for them immediately. That eases a whole bunch of spending. If we're trying to create a sport where we're getting eyeballs on it, well, let's have a draft. Lots of people will watch that. Everyone keeps talking about how we want to identify superstars and grow with them and all the rest of it. Well, a draft system will do that. The biggest argument I've heard against it is that we don't want to put too much pressure on people too young, and we don't want to get people's heads getting too big. Well, to be honest, those arguments just don't stack up for me, because if you're about to become a professional sports person, dealing with pressure is a pretty important part of the job, possibly the most important part of the job. So that bit doesn't wash, and we want to keep people's heads on the ground. I'm sorry, but the very best. Look at the England under-20s team. Mm. Some of those players are already in national papers and Sky Sports News and all the rest of it on a near weekly basis. Their heads are perfectly fine.
Yeah.
And if they're not, nothing about a draft system was going to change that. They're already, everyone's known about Kepu Tuipulotu as a schoolboy. Wales were trying to sign him up,
Yeah,
the arguments just don't wash for me on that front. The only argument that would wash for me is the Premiership clubs don't want it, which I might disagree with them on principle, but at least that's a genuine argument. The rest of it's just nonsense.
Yeah, and I think the other comment that I have seen that I think is now a bit dated is that oh, we want to bring through players from our own region. We want to bring through players from our local area, and we want to house them and home them. Where like I get that, because like 10 years ago, you used to, if you were in an academy, you used to either get signed to the academy that you're currently at. Like if you were in Bath under 18s, for example, you'd either get signed for Bath or you wouldn't get a contract.
Yeah.
Whereas now, you'll either get signed for Bath, or maybe Saracens want you, or maybe Newcastle want you, or maybe Cardiff want you. And like, because so many more clubs are now shopping around that under 18 level, because they've realized that these players are ready and available. Yeah. And sometimes even we've got to a point last year where Club A will offer you a contract, and Club B will as well. Yeah. Like we've got people fighting out for contracts. You saw with that Kepu Charlie Griffin situation last year. With and like before that, we had when Junior Kapoku went to Exeter, and so did Louis Sinclair. Like these guys sort of jumped ship with a contract on the table at their home club.
A draft system, it allows you to select players based on what you need.
Yeah.
So Newcastle last year would have got first pick in the draft, having finished bottom of the table, and everyone in the country probably would have picked Kepu Tuipulotu as number one, except possibly Newcastle, who might have gone, do you know what? We need a long-term fly half. Yeah. We're going to pick Ollie Davis as the number one draft pick. Oh. It creates a really interesting dynamic.
I'd love for us to do a draft. I think maybe we've got to try that out. Maybe that's an opportunity for when we get to sort of May,
We'll just
June.
mock a draft up.
We'll mock a draft up, and we'll pick sort of 4 or 5 teams each, and we'll become general managers and then present that. Maybe that's something we do down the line, because
there's a computer game in that somewhere, I'm sure.
Absolutely, I've just got the idea of like you nicking Ollie Davis, and I'd be like, oh, that would have been my pick, and right, that's in the diary. We'll do that towards the end of the season. Absolutely. Because that could be exciting.
I just think it's a no-brainer, and you could have every young player in the country eligible for the draft. You could probably have guys that missed out on contracts and gone to uni that reapplied, much like you get in the college system in the US, who then re-enter the draft for a second year running. Yeah, you could even have maybe the third round of draft picks is actually they go to the championship clubs. There's a whole range of things you could do here.
My brain is
really good fun.
Brilliant.
It would be really good TV, and clubs would end up with players that they need.
And you're gonna make stars out of players. Like first round picks in American sport are forever famed. Yes, there's some that are famed for the wrong reasons, but like they're famed. And being famous in rugby is not that common. So I'm not really too bothered now if you're famed for the right reasons or the wrong reasons. If you're famous and you're a rugby player, you've got to take it at this point, because there's like we've seen the Marcus Smith buying his G-Wagon on Netflix, and like we think that proves that he's famous. But if I were to go out of my house right now and go onto the street and say, do you know who Marcus Smith is? I'd say 7 out of 10 would go, not a clue, mate. Like that's just, we live in this bubble of thinking that rugby is at its peak in fan base and sort of entertainment value, and we're nowhere near. But we need to start pushing these players out. And yes, it might go wrong in places, but at least people will be talking about it.
See, now my mind is whirring. Okay, I'm going to ask you a question now that I've not prepped you for at all.
Okay.
Who would your number one draft pick be out of this year's cohort?
Oh my goodness! But again, look, I'll slightly dodge it. What I think is that, to your point exactly, it completely depends on the club. Like, if it would depend on who they need. Like the first name that kind of came to my sort of the forefront of my mind was Sean Sharp. But like, if I was Bath, for example, last thing I need is a fullback. So like I think it's...
That's where it gets. I'll come back to say that's where it gets so interesting, because also what value a fullback?
Yeah,
whilst a brilliant fullback is brilliant, what are your key positions? Is probably 9, 10, tight head, hooker, probably close skills kind of positions. So you end up. I'm honestly, I'm fascinated by the whole thing.
Maybe. Who would yours be?
Well, if I play it who would have the number one draft pick, which is Newcastle, I think I'd go for James Lineker.
Yeah.
Because I think they need a long-term 10.
Yeah.
He'd be in the mix anyway, to be fair. But
I think
Tadaro as well.
Yeah, Tadaro is a great shout.
Jack Marshall at Sarries as well.
I think maybe also for Newcastle, sticking on that Sarries seam like a Noah Caliori, to plug that Radwan gap.
Yeah,
could be important.
actually, do you know who? Not a glamour position, but Elliot Williams at Harlequins.
Yeah, that's a good shout.
I think I'd be looking pretty seriously at him if I was anyone.
That's a very good shout. I think he would. Yeah, well, probably for Harlequins realistically with Launchbury sort of.
Yeah, they've got an aging second row cohort, don't they?
Yeah, I know they've just signed Treadwell, but like that would potentially be a position that they'd look to strengthen. Look, this has to be something that we do because we can sit down, and I know that would take up a lovely afternoon of mine, is like going through all the academy teams.
It wouldn't even take up an afternoon. I would spend about a month on research on it.
These like big sort of like project plans on our walls, and we're like, oh, we're going to sign this guy. This is why I think, maybe us in for general managers of a Premiership club near you.
Absolutely. Listen, hey. If any Premiership club wants us to run this for them, more than happy to.
Head of recruitment, yeah. We'll be on that.
Right. Well, that's the academy stuff. Well, actually,
it's not really.
We've talked about complete nonsense about it.
We've just been fantasizing. Who's going to go where?
Run through it a little bit. We won't go deep onto all the playoff games, but we'll focus in on the final. But before that, below the final, do you look at that and think clean sweep to the south, or do you see maybe a Sale Sharks winning against Gloucester? Difficult though because it's at Kingsholm.
Yeah, that would be the one where I'd potentially flag, only because I think Sale should be higher because of, obviously, as you said, start of the season they had a bit of a mare. They could be the difference. Is it Bristol Newcastle?
Bristol Newcastle, yeah. Bristol have really picked up pace, I think, in the last few weeks.
I think if it was the Bristol of round 1 and round 2, then against the Falcons that sort of started off, then maybe.
Yeah, I think they found their feet. I feel a bit for them actually, because I think they might have maybe ended up in a lower position than they maybe are due, because they've impressed.
Yeah. Could Yorkshire kind of? I think they'll impress people. I'd say that. I think they'll impress people. Not necessarily I'm saying they're going to win, but I think there could be a standout moment, or like I think that's going to be quite a free-flowing game. So I think we could see a lot of end-to-end. And
I think it'll be a fun one, won't it? It'll be a fun one.
But yeah, about this final then, sort of Bath Saints, the sequel. Let's have a think, because I think
I actually give Saints a good chance here.
Yeah,
I think their motivation levels will be higher than Bath. Fourth final in a row, yet to convert one. They're going to be dying to do so. So I'm feeling good for Saints. Bath are high quality. I think Bath are probably favourites, but I think.
Do you want to predict Saints?
I think Saints might nick it. I think Saints might nick it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think it will be quite similar to last year's, where Saints will continue to fight and fight and fight. Like, you remember that Benu score from like the halfway line where he basically carved up, and then I think Saints took the lead there, and then James Lineker scored about 56 drop goals, and
he did rather take control of that final towards the end, didn't he?
And I think it could be a repeat of that, in that they'll like kick a goal, 9-6, 3-6, 9-12 sort of scoreline leads, and like, who was that? Who scored that try in the corner to win the game? Was it
Stefan Emmanuel?
Stefan Emmanuel, yeah. I think that as like a blueprint for this final could repeat itself again. if Saints were able to get on the blower to our good friends at the Azuri and say, Edo,
can we borrow Edo?
any chance, then I genuinely think that could be a big difference.
Well, it's a fallow week.
Yeah, look, I'd love it if it's like it'd be like the Undertaker if he just like all the lights went dark at Kingsholm and like it went just before the whistle blew, and then like they come back up and like Edo Tadara is holding the ball and he's about to kick off, and Bath are like, oh my. And he just completely takes the game by storm.
I add this to the draft of ways we can dramatise rugby union.
We're like doing like Rugby the musical at the moment and trying to think of different ways that we can spice up the game. But like that,
I also think the other advantage Saints might have is they've had 2 weeks to prepare for this.
Yeah.
And probably I suspect they've been assuming that Bath would be the team. So they'll have had a couple of weeks to really get stuck in and prep for this.
And research. Like we're at a point now where there's there's a lot of footage out there.
Yeah.
It's not like under 18s campaigns of old where you're focused on yourselves and whatever. These players can look in at Bath and the way they function and capitalize off that.
Yeah, no, I think it'll be a very good final. I also think it will be probably the best game of the lot. Like, forget the relative levels. I think it'll be the most competitive game.
I think maybe most competitive. I think maybe that Gloucester Sale game, but I think it'll definitely be most competitive.
Yeah, no, it'll be a good one. Right, that's the Academy League tidied up. Just going to touch on the Continental Tyres Under-15 Schools Cup. By the way, if a tyre company wants to come and sponsor us at any point, you're more than welcome. They seem to be popping up all over the place. But I've noticed that Bridgestone aren't sponsoring any rugby. Michelin aren't either, nor a Goodyear. So if any
Pirelli,
of you guys,
if we want to go a bit fancy.
well, exactly. I can talk about Formula One as well if they'd like. I'm just saying there's an opening for a tyre.
Yeah, your G-Wagon needs some new tyres.
Exactly. I might be building it from the tyres up, I suppose, but we'll see where we get to. But the Continental Tyres Under-15 Schools Cup, it was the last of the quarterfinals was on Wednesday. An absolutely epic game. Lord Wandsworth College against Collegiate. Lord Wandsworth was 17-0 up, in control. Collegiate comes storming back, but the kicking of Gillies, the inside centre for Lord Wandsworth, was unbelievable. And he's just banging over kick after kick, ironically enough, or coincidentally enough, on the Johnny Wilkinson pitch, and he was kicking like a young Johnny Wilkinson to send Lord Wandsworth through, where they will play Wellington College in the semi-finals. Wellington College, who are the only team to have beaten Lord Wandsworth so far this year. And the other semi-final is Northampton School for Boys against Hymers College. Northampton School for Boys, who won it in 2023, reached the final in 2024, and here they are in the semi-finals in 2025. So a big weekend of semi-finals coming up, and in fact, the under-18 semi-finals are on the same weekend as that weekend of the 1st and 2nd of March at Aylesbury RFC.
Isn't that the small matter of like Harrow versus RGS High Wycombe on one?
Yeah, just a little Harrow RGS High Wycombe game. Only the reigning champions against a cup legend.
Yeah.
RGS High Wycombe, who deserve something. They've been so good for 2 years. Just can't quite get across the line. I feel for them, but they've given it everything. The other one, actually, Warwick against Queggs Wakefield, which is like a cup classic. For some reason, Warwick and Queggs always end up playing each other.
That's going to be a gritty game, isn't it?
Yeah, that's gonna be proper cup rugby. Yeah. We've got some big semi-finals to look forward to, and then of course it's seventh season. We're into it. We're going to be live on the 23rd of February. That's the next big live tournament coming up down at Christ College Brecon, the Christ College Brecon Sevens, which is going to bring some of the top sides from England across the border to take on some of the best in Wales. Tends to be a really good one for getting a bit of an indication about what's going to be happening at the Howden Rosslyn Park National School Sevens, because that's where those Welsh sides really get their biggest exposure in terms of English competition. This is the first time that English and Welsh sides properly play against each other, and we've seen some really good Glantuff sides in the past. have a challenge at that one. So that'll be good. And it's Sam Bork and Ben Waddington on commentary for that one. So do tune in if you get the chance. Right, is there anything else, Will? We're done.
We're done. We're done. I think that's a good setup. Yeah, I'm at Kingsholm on Sunday. So you may hear my tones over some academy rugby.
So Robert's Fiesta, is it not?
It is the duo back again. So yeah, we'll be excited. I'll be excited for that, and yeah, I'm going to try and speak to the Prem Rugby powers that be about our brilliant ideas for how we're going to revolutionise the game.
Just tell them that we'll sort it all out. All they need to do is approve it. It's fine.
Yeah, and give us loads of money. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, obviously the budget needs to be enormous for it. So
that G-Wagon insurance won't pay itself. So
exactly. Well, I need to start adding, an actual car to these tyres. So we've got to do something.
Yeah. Again, we're finishing on a high. There we go.
Absolutely. Well, hey, free tyres are free tyres, aren't they? Right, that's it. We've gone under an hour again as well. Well done. We're starting to develop some sort of ability to time keep, so that's good. Thank you all for listening, watching, whichever you've done. As I say, you can get in touch with us on @NextGen15, @NextGenXV, or on @NextGen15 Clubhouse. Do please send us in some questions so that we stop talking about tyres and G-Wagons, and we can focus on answering what you want to hear. But until next time, Will, thank you very much.
Thank you, Angus.
Goodbye, everyone.